A warm welcome to the Renewal Conversations this week at Team for the Soul. With my husband, Sebastien, we co-founded Team for the Soul, which will really help compassionate professionals and caregivers to regenerate daily, to prevent burnout, to complete grief, and just transform. That's the process of wholeness towards higher potential. And we provide online interdisciplinary programs and workshops, present at conferences. We do online groups, one-to-one life coaching and spiritual care. And also we have a membership for Christians where we help people pursue all this in the community, Team for Our Soul community. And today, Sebastien and I, we decided to flip the table, so to speak, and he's going to interview me, and I'm going to talk about my journey of regeneration. And with that, I want to welcome Sebastien in today's, as he's leading this conversation, and we're hoping to continue and having more shared conversation on particular topics together. So with that, let's just dive right in.
Welcome, Ioana. How are you today?
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Can you tell me more about your journey and your vocation?
Yeah, so my journey as a giver, I would say started like for many people when I was young. I just really appreciate my family was a family of givers. They always put others first in a certain way. Of course, sometimes I did not like that as a kid. I wish they would put me first. But they always thought of other people. They thought of families. They thought other people in our families, other people, our friends and neighbors. And I think I was just so inspired by it. There was also some health conditions in our family, and that made me curious to kind of help them, it just to face that reality. Oh my goodness, what if something bad might happen? That brought me to this sense of I do want to help. I do also want to help others. So I didn't particularly wanted to be a physician. My parents were really passionate about both my sister and I being physicians, but I actually liked the studying science and physics and biology. So I said, oh, okay, sure, I'll do it. I'll help as a physician. So I guess that got me started.
Thank you. Thank you. So it started really young.
In a certain sense, although I think from the outside, people wouldn't tell because I was always with my nose in books. I just love to read and love to study. But in a certain sense, in my heart, it started young. Yes.
So you get your knowledge when you were young with the books and your studies.
Yes. Yes.
And tell me more about your work and what do you do to help other people as a giver?
Yes. So I think it really fluctuated throughout my time, and I think the giver, this sense of giving to others, it was the red thread in my life, because I started as a physician, and initially I was very fascinated by surgery. So I worked a lot in the orthopedics department, volunteered as a medical school, and then in the obstetric gynecology department, and it was just so fascinating because I love delivering babies. Because it was just this moment of sheer beauty. Here we are in a room, everyone was, frantically moving around, trying to make things happen. And all of a sudden, there's this pause, there's this gasp where a new human being is born. It was just like amazing to me. It felt very mystical, although I wasn't consider myself a Christian or believer back then. So we changed, and I thought, oh, that's what I want to do. I want to be an OBGYN, obstetric gynecologist. But I realized that after a while, I will probably be bored. I realized I had this someone ask me, what do you see yourself in 10 years? And I'm like, 10 years just doing the same thing.
Okay.
I was like, okay, I think I'm going to be bored. So this is when I realized, well, why do I really passionate? I'm passionate about learning about behavior, learning about how other people are thinking, are feeling. So this is where I decided I'll just go in psychiatry.
Oh, okay. Okay. So psychiatry was a good fit for you to help people to be close with you.
Yes, I think so back then. And then I was a bit disillusioned at some point because although on one hand, I love how powerful and helpful medications are, I think psychiatric medications I've seen changing people's lives in such amazing ways that I know there's concerns usually with medications. Of course, we don't want to give too many medications to people, but I've seen lives saved that way, trajectories, families united together. So I saw on one hand how powerful the medications were, but what I didn't like is it was too much focus on the medication as a psychiatrist. Most psychiatrists nowadays just give medications. And for me, it felt like was missing something. We're talking about thoughts, we're talking about emotions, but the depths of our soul, the depths of our inner conversation, it
Right.
just felt skewed. So this is where I decided I'm gonna quit and try something different.
Yeah, and psychiatry means healing the soul. So this new generation maybe forget the soul and the healing.
Say more about that, about the etymology. I know you told me this several times, but
Yeah, well, of course, the medication are very important, like you say. We cannot bypass them, and they're really useful. But the etymology is healing the soul. So you need also to have a conversation, a relationship with the patient, client. It's not enough medication for trauma. We can speak about it. So for many years was they were using even before psychoanalytic, they were using the words discussion, sharing. I think this aspect of healing the soul can be very different for psychiatrists. Some people
Yes.
we can do it without medication, some with both, and some only with medication. So I don't know
Yeah.
what you think about that. Yeah.
No, I think you're raising a very good point, and I think that's what attracted me to psychiatry in the first place. Because funny story, during communist era, I grew up in communist era. Some book psychology was forbidden at some point for some weird reason. So if you had a psychological book, a psychology book, it would be like underground. So it was kind of a cool thing. So I had this underground book from Freud, copy, Xerox copy after Xerox copy after who knows how many copies this was. And then I got another one on Jung. I must have been 14, 15, and I just loved it. And I think that was what brought me to in my long journey to psychiatry. But in a certain sense, nowadays, psychiatrists not only do mostly medication, but are pushed in a certain way by our society to do just medication. So in theory, yes, psychiatry is the doctor, physician of the soul, but in reality, the culture, the society is seeing psychiatrists, they're pushing them in this role, and they are in the end many times just doing that. I think for me, I quit psychiatry and then I came back. When I did come back, I did integrate much more, and I did in my practice. But I think what moved me further to what we're doing now at Team for the Soul, which is life coaching and spiritual care, was this awareness, even at a higher level, that there are ways that we could use psychological methodologies to help more people. I think one thing that I love the one-to-one conversations because they're so healing, but I am very moved by the power of communities and the power of how much change we can do as a group. So for me, that is a very, very important piece. And that's why I'm so passionate about what we're doing at Team for the Soul, because we're helping people with education, but also with the power of the group transformation and in part of life coaching. So yeah, I'm really excited about that.
Can you talk a little bit more about what you're doing Team for the Soul?
Yes, so it evolved in time. I think the big framework, I want to bring the big framework and then I'm going to go into the more details, but I'm such a big framework. I like to see the forest first. What I've discovered, and I'm curious what you think about the inner map of the psyche. So I want to ask you about that as well. But through the work of different psychological methodologies and then internal family system, which I would train, you got trained as well, and then psychosynthesis, and you got trained as well. We both are. There's a sense that in the inner map, there are obviously many ways to describe our inner journey, but there is a kind of like a lower subconscious, more like what's in the past, what we're holding in our memories. Then there is a middle consciousness, which is kind of our day-to-day job, car, family,
Yeah.
what we're doing. And then there's a higher consciousness, which is the higher aspirations, what we long for. And this realm was described this way by Assagioli, who's a psychiatrist, Italian psychiatrist. But what I loved about it is that at the core, we have the awareness and will. And then, so the way we're doing a Team for the Soul, the journey is working through the past through grief recovery. And I know that's a big piece of what you're doing, Sebastien.
Yeah.
Then kind of in the middle, how do we work on relationships, but also how do we strengthen our sense of will and awareness and the presence of God? And then how do we connect with our higher consciousness and our higher aspirations? For many people, those are connected with the ultimate reality, with God. How do we bring that into, so it'll infuse our day-to-day existence, so we're not just car, job, family all the time. So what I'm doing, I mean, you're doing the grief piece.
Yeah.
I'm supporting you in that, but also we have the renewal in action, right? That's the sense of how do we regenerate in that middle consciousness, but balancing the entire inner psyche, and also with a higher aspiration. And this is all three elements are really embedded in the community that we're building, the Team for Our Soul community, where people can come in a shared journey, and we're supporting them in the different phases of their spiritual and psychological growth. But I'm really curious, Sebastien, what is your sense of the inner psyche? Because you've had lots of experiences with people, especially with grief, right? How do you understand? And did that model from Assagioli made sense to you?
Yeah, I understand always inner psyche as something to a chance to open some doors or windows to the client or to myself also, to look forward the mystery. We all have some issues, some sadness, pain. And when we stay in, I will say in the binary logic, we're stuck in it. So I think like a Trinitarian logic or Ternary logic that will open path to explore, or many paths, whatever, but you won't stop to be stuck in dilemma. I think it's a little bit that my work also as a chaplain to open some windows to see that the patient have other paths that they can explore, or the clients they can explore in their life. That there's a trauma, there's a pain, but you're not only your trauma or your pain or your sadness. Of course, you have to sit down to listen to your sadness, your pain, your trauma, but that doesn't mean that you're stuck in it. There's other journeys like you can explore.
Yeah, so from what I'm hearing, I think that makes sense, and I've never put it together, but in a certain sense, you're saying always to think of a trinity as opposed to binary logic versus A versus B.
Correct.
Yeah, so that's kind of in the moment, almost like on an awareness and will level, as a portal, as a mystery. Yes. And I see it also that embedded really beautifully with the journey from moving from integrating our entire psyche through those windows, either in the lower unconscious or the middle day-to-day, finding the mystery right through the grief, or finding the mystery through the day-to-day existence, or finding the mystery also connecting with our higher consciousness and purpose. Yeah.
So your program is very complete. It's
In a
integrated a lot. So that's a good chance for the clients to explore more themselves, no?
Yes, yes. And it's evolving. I think what I've noticed is that as having gone through so many trainings and so many ways of being and experiences, it's a time of integrating. And I just feel like, yes, it is flashing out. And interesting, Dr. Assagioli is a psychiatrist from Italy, described this, and I've witnessed it over and over again. And that's why I'm so passionate about thinking of the past, through the grief, the losses that we've experienced, the present, the middle consciousness, and the higher consciousness. Dr. Sogioli described this phenomenon that when we release, sometimes people want to be just spiritual. And they say, I'll forget about the past and I'll just be really spiritual. And they try really hard. And there's a term for this, spiritual bypass. What happens the more we pull towards higher consciousness, if there's still losses and grief that aren't resolved, they're going to pull the consciousness down. And if you might be listening, you might have experienced this, you might have this amazing, beautiful experiences. They pull us into the higher realm, and all of a sudden, boom, we're just pulled right back.
Yeah.
It's because there's this inner force, and he's the only one that describes this. And I've also seen it in the Orthodox theology, that there is an inner force towards integration.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, we cannot just say, oh, I'm just going to be this thing. Well, I believe in God. So if God created us to be complex being and have all the aspects of ourselves, if we're just going to move in one direction, the other is going to pull us back. So not because it's not because it's sabotaging, or is not because sometimes we say, oh, I sabotage myself and do this. It's not that. It's just this other aspects of ourselves are inviting for wholeness. So as Agioli described, and I see this over and over again, pull up, spiritual, boom, the grief comes up, almost like
an extreme.
Yes, almost like you're saying, but I'm here to take care of me. Now that I see this light, I want to come to light as well. And I see the opposite as well. I see when people go through the grief recovery method, you and I both are training that.
Right.
I've seen it. It's mind-blowing how powerful this experience is. It's educational. It's not even therapy.
Correct. It's amazing.
But I've seen people as they move and release the grief and the pain, not the grief itself, but the pain, unnecessary pain that we're holding. I see people moving sometimes and having the opposite experiences. And yeah, it's just amazing how we work in integration. And Asagioli's vision is that in time, as we integrate our sense of awareness, is imagine like a spiral, it moves from our little day-to-day to be higher and higher as we do those moves up and down until we're all complete, holding it all.
So that brings integration and balance, no?
Yes. And it kind of what you said about the Trinity, right? The sense of, that's what I love. The Orthodox theology is just mind-blowing to me. The beauty of the Trinity. It brings this balance. Is not one or the other.
Correct.
It's wholeness. Yeah, and I love what you said about that window and the mystery, because that's exactly it. When we can hold the opposite. I mean, I'm seeing them vertical, right? But when you're describing, I'm almost seeing them horizontally.
Well, it can be like a cross. I don't know.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing what you're saying? Yeah. It's a little like a cross. Yeah.
Wow, that's great. And I'm curious about, how do you regenerate it? How do you renew yourself on a daily basis?
Obviously, I'm a little biased because I have the program, the Renewal in Action, but it really came out of decades and decades of trial and error, and decades of trying different psychological methodology, different spiritual tradition, obviously the Christian tradition, but learning about other traditions as well. There's this sense of, I think just give a little bit of history. Initially, I was all focused on my body. Exercise, eat healthy. I think for decades, I just focused on that because that's kind of the popular idea about regeneration. Just take care of your body, eat healthy, do some walks, do some yoga, meditation, whatever, exercise. But then kind of midlife, I realized that I was neglecting my emotions. So I did not have that in my book for regeneration, although of course I know of emotions. I help people with emotions all day long, but there's this sense of caring for emotions that is important, that I need to care for my own emotions. So about 10 years ago, during some difficult time, the emotions just really kind of backlash, they're like, there was a lot of grief, a lot of loss. And as I took care of them, it was great. But then if I didn't, I realized that this is actually like a garden, nurturing day to day. So taking care of emotion, it became really important. And obviously for me as a Christian, taking care of my soul and spiritual life was important for decades. But I think that was the big missing piece for me, taking care of my emotions, as I'm such an intellectual because I used to live in my head all the time. And some people live more in the emotions, and there's nothing bad with that. But that we all need to just balance all of them in a certain way. So how do I regenerate right now? The biggest thing is this sense of flexibility, structure, and flexibility. Talk about polarities. I love it. It just made the connection, right? I'm not a person that can have rigid rituals. Some people can. This is amazing. Hats off to them. But if we're too flexible, I'm more on the creative side as well. So if I'm too flexible, I won't have any ritual whatsoever.
Correct.
So I learned there's actually a bridging, a third way, where we can have some structure, but it has the fluidity that we can adapt it based on the day's demands.
Okay.
Let's say if I'm really busy, I might do my rituals just 5-10 minutes a day, morning,
Amazing.
midday, afternoon, and evening. But if I do have time, I could spend an hour, preparing in the morning.
That's great. Yeah.
Or later at night. Yeah.
Can you share some small activities, daily activities for renewal yourself or for other people, to give some tricks for people listening to us? Or
Yes. Okay. I would say there are two elements to this. One was the process of discovery and just trying different things, obviously within reason. Not going to regenerate by throwing myself off the cliff and trying parachuting. It's just not me, right? So there's some boundaries in the type of exploration. But I would say I try things and then I test them.
okay.
Which for me, it's kind of like in the Bible, be gentle as a dove, but wise as a serpent, and test everything. So, okay, I'm hearing that, sure, I should exercise this way. What a cool idea. But then I try it, and then I listen to my body, and I listen to my emotions, and I integrate it and see what is working. So that's kind of my process.
Okay.
Listen, discern, try it, see if it's working. If it's not, discard it. If it is, hold on to it. So
Okay.
I've noticed in the morning, it helps me to really stretch. Sometimes I'm up for a 5-minute running, but stretching really moves me. And I'm like, of course, after 8 hours of sleep, my body's probably like, right? So I love to stretch. So just on a body level, I love to stretch a bit in the morning. Then I do a walk in the middle of the day. And then at night, I like to do a little bit more endurance training because by then my body feels like, okay, I need to do that. Obviously, the eating healthy, and that has been an entire journey for me. On an emotional level, I love to check with myself. And I found it very interesting that emotions are very connected with the body.
Mm-hmm.
So I can check my emotions when I'm stretching as well. Or when I'm winding down at night, I'm checking with my emotions as well. How am I doing? And also when I'm walking in the middle of the day. So when my body's active, this is a chance to check with my emotions. And if you're used with parts work, this is when I check with my parts as well. It's so much easier to me to check with my younger versions of myself. How are they doing? My 2-year-old and my 5-year-old version of myself and my teenage version and so on. And I would say from the spiritual perspective, the deepest awareness I had in my 20s was that there is something beyond our three-dimensional world.
Mm-hmm.
There is a much greater and amazing reality. There is God, that it's not pursued through the mind. It's not pursued through emotions. Oh, I'm just feeling great. God exists. Well, what if I don't feel great? Then God doesn't exist, or you know what I mean? but it really starts with a sense of wanting to enter in a relationship with the ultimate reality, with God. Like sometimes people try to discover God. Well, I'm going to pray to God. If God answers me, I believe in God. If it doesn't, it's kind of like in a love relationship, right? If I say, oh, I'm going to twist your arm, and if you really respond how I want, then I'm going to love you back and maybe I'll marry you, right? It doesn't work that way, but it was just a deep longing. Like, if God really exists, how some people say, and they died for this, right? Don't I want to know it? So when I ask the question, God, do you really exist? And if you do, I do want to enter in a relationship with you. Show me how. I have no idea. And that to me has been the most amazing journey. So ultimately, for me, regeneration is in this connection with this ultimate reality, with this, however you want to call it. Some people call it higher consciousness, cosmic
Yeah.
consciousness, God. I feel it that we are a speck, we're this little thing in this universe, and that we're sustained in a certain way, even on our body level, with food, with water, with everything, light. Like there's nothing we're doing actually. It's all coming secondary layers and layers through the source.
Mhm.
And that to me is what keeps me regenerating in action ultimately. That's my barometer in a certain sense, if it's
Right.
working or not working. Am I
Yeah.
staying in connection with God? So
So
that's my,
you integrate physical in the morning, emotional, and spiritual. So
and spiritual, yes. And that testing and trying is through this centering awareness. Am I still in relationship with God? So as I said earlier, try different things, do it, but then see how the impact it has. And the ultimate impact for me is, am I still connected with God?
okay, precious.
And I didn't mention the mind just because I've naturally I've always been connected with my mind and regenerating and reading and whatnot. So, but I do that all the time. I always find something curious, something interesting that keeps me excited.
Great. Thank you for sharing. Tell me more about your program. Just a new program coming up. Is a new project, or how can we reach Team for the Soul for to follow your program and other project or books writing or whatever. So
Yeah.
reach you.
What's new and how can reach me? I mean, we have our website, Team for the Soul, for sure, and then you can set up a quick call if you're listening to this. I think I kind of shared the bigger framework from what we're doing, and we do have the grief recovery method, right, to help with the past losses. There's courses, online courses that are transformative in a certain sense from the Renewal in Action. I have a will course, how to access effortless will. I didn't mention this in this interview, but I paused psychiatry to do teaching. So I'm such an educator, so my brain is like on fire. Can I teach? And I love creating courses. So there's lots of resources on a website. I think what's really coming up for me is a desire to write a book about the renewal in action. So that's really what's so I'm hoping we'll see. Well, I'm saying it online now. We'll see if
Great.
it will pan out, but I hope to have more to report in a year from now about
That's amazing.
this that's my project that's upcoming.
Well, thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you for being here. It's so fun, right? Because here we are, a wife and a husband team, and we've done this in many different ways. And here we're turning the table, and I'm the one interviewed. So I appreciate you being here with me.
Thank you. Thank you. And I wish you a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too. And I'll see you very shortly after a few hours. We'll see each other
Second.
again. And a few seconds in our house. And if you're listening, I want you to be encouraged that there are many ways to regenerate. And if you're curious about this flexible blueprint, yeah, we do have some things coming up in April. We're going to have open doors, especially if you're a Christian. But yeah, we hope to support you in any way. And if you just even don't know just what you might need or want, just set up that call and we can talk with myself. If you want to talk with Sebastien, we'll make that happen. We're here to support you on your journey. There's nothing more than we love than to walk alongside other people in the different seasons in life in such a way that you can feel inspired to live the most meaningful, amazing life that you can have, because there's only one of you in this world and the world needs you. And we are here to support you. If there's any way we can support you or send you to a place that could support you, in other words, send information or whatever, consider us a resource for you. So, and thank you, Sebastien, for
You're welcome.
being here. And thank you for sharing about the Trinity. I love it.
You're welcome. And thank you again for sharing and taking your time to share with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. And thank you so much for being part of the Renewal Conversations today. It's always so joyful to do things that hopefully will inspire you to take actions. I did mention today about the Renewal Blueprint and how this could be flexible and at the same time has this structure that could provide the integration on a body, mind, heart, and soul level so that you can regenerate. And I want to bridge this because you will find lots and lots of renewal strategies and renewal courses. And I encourage you to look around and find what's good for you. And what is unique about our renewal in action and our regeneration blueprint is that it provides a condensed framework so that you don't have to spend decades like I did, not only in my personal experiences, but also through my professional experiences, as I mentioned, through my physician training and psychiatry training and internal family system training and psychosynthesis and life coaching training. And I didn't mention the spiritual care training. There are ways that we can grow that are for day-to-day situations for people like you and me, just trying to live our lives, especially if you're determined to connect with Christ and get to know this being, this universal consciousness that exists. Then this program just bakes in, so to speak, decades and decades of experience, of giving, of compassion, all my mistakes that I've done and others through the different trainings that I've done. And of course, there's lots of free resources out there. I encourage you to do that. Look for different programs. But if you're ever interested in this strategic blueprint that can save you years and years of putting things together in a coherent way that integrates body, mind, heart, and soul, but also science, psychology, spiritual care, and the Christian faith, then check out the Renewal in Action program and working through the Renewal Blueprint. And in April also, we will open the doors to the community, Team for Our Soul community, where there is a process of transformation that goes through the life coaching process, moving through not just renewal, but also working through day-to-day experiences and grief. So with that, I thank you so much for everything you're doing, and I say goodbye for now, and I wish you a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you so much. Bye.